So Wayikain actually has the meaning of it happened just that way. It happened just that way. It's an emphatic declaration that what is recorded as what God commanded is exactly what happened and the way it happened. And then you have him naming that body of water, seas, Yamim, and the dry land then is going to be named earth later. So you have day 3 begins the same way, Wayomer, and then you have him collecting, and then you have Wayikain changing place, interestingly, and then his naming, and then we have, then he saw that it was good, and then on day 3 we have a second round of this format of God speaking, calling for the earth to sprout with herbs, and then it came to pass just that way. So now notice we have a switch of the order of Wayikain. It's beginning to set a pattern that is going to occur earlier rather than later, like it did in day 2. And so it brought forth, and then we have God saw that it was good, and then we have the conclusion of day 3. So what do we have thus far going through those first 3 days? We have God speaking. We have the speech that he spoke. We have the result of those commands. We have God's view given in verse 4 at this stage. We have God's work. We have the result stated in it happened just that way. This is the same as the result that's earlier here in day 3. And then we have naming, and then we have God's view again coming, and this becomes the pattern for the rest. So as we go on through this, then that's what we have. And notice that the evening and morning on the day is the AM, the PM and the AM. This is why the Jewish community today begins the Sabbath at 6 p.m. at sundown on Friday and goes over into Saturday morning, and the Sabbath ends at 6 p.m. on Saturday. Why? The reason for that is because this is the time pattern that God set when he created. You see, you have the evening stated first and then the morning. Why? Because darkness did exist first. And then God said, let there be light, Wayihi or. And then we have the light coming, and that light is the day. And so that tells us that the measuring of the days are the evening and the morning. Interestingly, when I was in Bangladesh working on Bible translation, early on in my learning the Bengali language, I was at a handicap because our team was working in Bengali and translating, and I would give them input from the Hebrew as we went along and as I was learning Bengali. And at one stage, we reached the end of Genesis, and we were preparing to publish it. And I said, we need to go through it one more time. I said, I'm just now getting to the stage where I can understand all the Bengali involved, and I have been asking one of our men to back translate from the Bengali manuscript into English for me so I can double check, and I have found at least one mistake. And they said, what mistake did you find? And I says, our current translation has 8 days of creation, not 7. And they were somewhat astounded and said, well, how did that happen? And I said, it happened because one of the team, after we had our discussions, decided on their own that when it said that darkness existed first, and then it says there was evening and there was morning, day 1, they in their mind interpret, oh, evening, that's the latter part of a day. So the evening is actually the last part of the previous day, day 1, and the morning is day 2. Even though it says day 1. But it began on day 1 with the evening. And I said, by doing that then, what we've inserted is an extra day that isn't there. And we made it 8 days instead of 7, and we know that that's not right. And so I went back to the man who had done the back translation because he did not catch that. His back translation missed it entirely. He gave it in the traditional way. There was evening and morning, day 1. Never said anything about the rest of the text in the Bengali that added that extra day in there. And so I asked him, why didn't you see that? Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you translate exactly what's there in the Bengali so we could make this correction earlier than now? And he said, well, I couldn't figure out why that was there, but I figured you people are the ones who know what you're doing. And so I just assume that it's correct and that this is what was intended. And I says, but you're born Bengali. The Bengali language is your native language. You know that what it says is an extra date. He says, well, yeah, I know that. But he says, the man who serves as your Bengali advisor, he says, one of my own brothers, a Bangladeshi, he says, is a college teacher. He knows the language better than I do, so I assumed that there was something about the language I had not yet learned. That's the problem you go through with the idea of informants and language helpers, etc., when you're doing Bible translation. Because sometimes they look at someone else that's on the team and say, well, he's higher than I am. He has more knowledge than I am. So even though I see what appears to be a problem, I must not rightly understand it. And so I told him, I says, from now on, when you're asked about such things, I said, you give it the way you see it. We'll handle the issues and the relationships to everyone else on the team. It was a fascinating time. Unfortunately, the Bible Society had already published 10,000 copies. Even though we had told them, wait until we approve it. We sent it to them only so they could see that we were moving along at a good pace and had completed Genesis and were in the final stages. So from that time on, we stamped. Had a special stamp made, and the top of everything that went to the Bible Society had a stamp on the top of every page that said, not ready for publication. So that when it was finally ready for publication, that stamp was missing and they knew we were ready. 10,000 copies of 8 days of creation sitting out there. That's a nightmare for a Bible translator. It really is. It's terrible. Yes, Daniel.
Is there any significance in it being day one instead of the first day?
No, I don't think so, because we have the same thing done, for example, in Numbers chapter 7, when we're talking about the 12 days of the dedication of the tabernacle, when each of the tribes brings a set sequence of offerings and gifts to the tabernacle one by one. And we have the same basic